Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Shit Moms Won't Say. I'm like super honored that this person wanted to talk to me today. She is the owner and CEO of Authentically You Branding, founder of Jaded Survivor, breaker of all shitty cyclical behavior, was a teen mom who is now a happily married and awesome mommy to three amazing, amazing children. Jean Soto. Thank you for
Hi.
being here and your beautiful pink hair and sitting outside, which I think everyone should know. You were like, I'm apologizing, I'm outside. My kids, did you say they're all having malfunctions at the
Just
moment?
melting down, yeah. So
Well, because you
we're
had
gonna be
something
here.
else to do. They were like, you have something to do, so fuck you. But
Yeah.
thank you for leaving your home for me. I appreciate that very much. And we're going to get into your story in a minute. But before we do, I want to, you are not immune to the Big Mom 3 just because you have one of the coolest stories we've ever heard. So I am going to ask you. So, Big
Yeah.
Mom 3, first question. Did you always know you wanted to be a mom?
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Actually, funny, the earliest recording of me is when I was like 3 years old and my dad brought me fishing. And I used to carry a baby doll everywhere. So I had this little baby doll like tucked under my armpit. And I was just like pacing and ranting about how hard it is to be a mom. And I was like, you have to feed it. It cries and like you have to take care of it. And like I would just talk about motherhood and nobody was pregnant. I was an only child, like there with no rhyme or reason. I just like always talked about like the tribulations of being a mother.
Before even becoming, you knew how tough it was
Yeah,
before becoming a mom.
right?
Okay,
But
solid, solid.
yeah, I think I really wanted to become a mom later in my life, like probably like mid late 30s. I had this huge vision of like going to fashion school and traveling around the world first, and it got cut a little short.
Surprise. Yeah, look, shit
Yeah,
happens, right? Shit happens, and
yeah,
it all works out. Big mom question number two. And I keep saying to people, I'm like, I feel like you're gonna have a great answer for this, but I feel like, becoming a mom the way you became a mom, I'm hopeful that you're gonna have a really shitty answer. What is the like worst, most backhanded advice you have ever gotten from another mother or like another parent?
oh yeah. Okay, so I loved this question when I saw it, and I'm like, okay, how long of an answer do you want?
Doubt
So
it. I don't care. Give it. Whatever you
I
got.
So as you know, my first child was born when I was 17. I was 16 and pregnant, and then I had her at 17. And I think the biggest thing that people would tell me constantly is not to give her too much attention. So it's like, don't pick your child up too much. Don't pay attention when they're crying, like ignore them. Like it's just like you'll spoil your kid if you give them too much attention. And when I was 16, 17, I was like, okay, maybe there's something to that. Maybe I need to like keep it down, like because I'm super huggy, emotional, like want to like run to their rescue. But now that I have three, and I guess in the last 13 years of being a mom, I'm like, what kind of trash is that? Like let's
Trash.
let's let's ignore our kids' emotions and let's not teach them how to emotionally regulate, and they could just like work it out for themselves in a corner because we just like put them in timeout. And yeah, so even though that's like very tame, I feel like it's so it runs so deep, and the
Yeah.
damage of that, like the damage of just like ignoring your kid, or like thinking if you hug them, or if you sleep with them, it's too much love. Like there's a cap on love.
And that's
So
that's it. There's no cap on love. And like,
yeah.
I don't know if I'm happy to report it, but I think you'll feel okay hearing it. Like I had a kid in my 30s, right? And like we got the same shit. Like if we pick Lily up, they'd be like, "Oh, someone got what she wanted." And I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you mean my kid got a hug from her mom? Like she's not going to want me to pick her up forever. Like I don't care. Oh, she sleeps in bed with you? That's spoiling her." No, it's not. Like love is like it's nice to love your children. So I actually think that's a great answer. It's shady enough and shitty enough, but very true. So
Yeah, and it's something that I feel like our grandparents were just like they grew up with, and it's so ingrained
yeah.
in their head. But if you watch grandparents, and if you hear like the old joke about, especially grandma, all they do is hug and kiss and give tons of attention. And I feel like that is the way we kind of make up for it later on when we're raised with this very like hostile and aggressive, like, you know, don't give them too much attention. Later on, you like feel bad and have all these regrets, and you're like, okay, that was a mistake. Let me fix it.
Right. And you're like, I don't want to miss it now. Like they're my kids. I'm going to hug
Yeah.
them now. So yeah, that's a great answer. Okay.
Thank you.
Big mom question number 3. What is a skill or like a superpower you had before becoming a mom that you feel really helped you as a mom? And it could be when you first became a mom or later down the road, whatever it may be.
Yeah. So, okay, that was a good one too.
You.
Yeah, no, it was, and it made me think. So with my first, since I had her for 7 years, you know, alone, what I really valued was being able to just bring her to everything. I learned that, you know, if I had somewhere to go, my kid was just going to come along, and she was just going to learn, you know, be around people, be around situations, be around noise. And it worked out so beautifully to just bring her to adult things. And I feel like she learned how to be, I don't know, be mature, be mindful, like all these great skills. Especially, like, I brought her to college, like to classes sometimes, and to, you know, very mature things. So that skill, like, I guess regardless of what people think about, like if you're a single parent or just if you're, you know, you have a business or something to handle, like if you bring your kids and you treat your kids like, okay, this is real life, this is what we have to do, and you make it just a normal part of your life, like it makes your life tremendously easier as a parent. And it also makes your kid really understand at a young age, like, okay, this is what's appropriate, and, you know, this is how I need to be. So I think having that edge and learning that while I was alone helped me so much with my boys, because my 2 little boys are close in age. They're hyper as heck, and, you know, they learned, especially from their sister, like, okay, you know, now it's quiet time, or we're going to bring a coloring book and just sit and do this while mom, you know, works.
What's
So
remind me what's the breakdown of the ages of your guys? I know you have a daughter and 2 boys.
yeah, so Bella is going to be 13.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, Bella's going to be 13. That's crazy to say out loud. And Raphael is my middle one. That's my husband and mine's first son together. He is going to be 5 in December, which is also crazy to say out loud because I feel like he was born yesterday.
Me
And
too.
then my little baby, Ivan, he just turned 3. So I have 3, 5, and 13. That's like crazy.
Wow. So your daughter being 13 is crazy. So like, and I think I should like how we know each other. So you were like a neighbor of my wife's growing up. Like I wouldn't be like you guys were best friends. You just kind of knew each other. You were in existence in the same world. And my wife and I have been together, believe it or not, almost 10 years, which is also wacky.
Yeah.
But I've been aware of your story for probably like 8 of those 10 years. Like my wife said to me, she was like, this is someone you're going to want to just be friends with on social media because she is like a warrior and she's incredible and her story is amazing. So I've been aware of your stuff for a long time. So when you said you wanted to come on here, I was like, I'm going to just let her talk. Like I'm like, Jess, shut the fuck up and let the girl talk. Like you just, you know, you have one of those stories and like, it's incredible. But what I've really enjoyed watching like on social media truly is your willingness to open up about it over a progression of time. So I think, and you know, you're going to tell your own story, of course, and not to like let the cat out of the bag. Like you grew up in a fairly toxic environment. And when you grow up in a toxic environment, it's a learning curve of how much information you put out there at different times. So seeing you get to the point where you're like, you know what? Fuck it. Here's the story.
Yeah.
People like myself included, there are many people who are not as comfortable telling their full story. So like, it's just been really cool to see. And I'm literally going to just shut up and I'll ask questions here and there, but I'd love to hear you give this like really good version of the tale. And I think people should hear it. So I'll take a sip. I'll shut up and go to town.
No, thank you so much. I think that since I moved away from Nassau County, so, you know, where we all grew up, it's been a huge awakening for me to, you know, not only the year that I moved out, I was 16 and pregnant. And obviously for anybody, that's like a huge, like, world shift.
You know, they made a whole show about you. It's called 16.
So So no, one of the most awful things was like, so 16 and pregnant. What was the other one? The American Teen Mom, some shit like that. I don't know. Every single Teen Mom show possible was that year, and
Oh
when
no.
and yeah, and when I moved in 11th grade, like right before summer. So I wasn't even showing. I was like 2 months pregnant. I ended up having to leave the high school illegally, by the way. It was like they made up something that I was exempt because it would be a danger for my health and the baby if I stayed in the high school senior year. So yeah, so I left. So I left that town. I ended up moving in with my aunt and uncle, who are like my real father's side, because my mom lived with her new husband and they sucked. So yeah, they, at the time, my parents like didn't know what to do. No one really knew how to handle anything, and making the shift to a new school senior year, a new town, a new house, new parents, it felt like my aunt and uncle were like parents to me, and I had been close to them growing up. So they like instinctively were like, yeah, you're coming with us. We're not letting anyone like juggle you around and be crazy. Yeah. So, I did that senior year. I went into the high school and I was so nervous because my other school had told me I had to leave. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Do I get my GED? Am I going to be accepted in this school? So when I went, the lady there at the front desk, she was like, yeah, you could just sign yourself up. Like, it was no big deal. And by that time, I was obviously starting to show, and it was clear that I was pregnant, and like nobody cared. And the school was humongous. It was like going to a New York City school compared to, the small town I was from.
Yeah.
So we went from, that was, like I said, senior year, that graduating class in that new school was over 1,000 kids, whereas the old school was like 99 kids graduating, just to give people an understanding of like how much bigger that school was. Everybody was so kind. Like, senior year was amazing. Everybody was so supportive. People would like come up and rub my belly and talk to me, and like I was a human being, like
it's quite an icebreaker. If you're like at a new school, like I feel like you can't fly under the radar, like you're not just the new chick, you're the new pregnant chick.
I'm the pregnant girl. I was just like, I was all belly with Bella. It was like I swallowed a watermelon. I would just turn around and there'd just be this huge like protruding belly. But yeah, everyone was so kind. My teachers were amazing, and it was just the most supportive, great experience. They even gave me home tutoring. So like I had her Thanksgiving weekend, like literally the weekend. I was due in like a week, and I'm like, nobody's taking my Thanksgiving dinner away from me. Like, this is happening. Like, I'm going to eat as much as humanly possible, and if I go into labor, it's okay. So after that weekend, they gave me tutoring, and I ended up getting high honors and graduating early. And like, I thought it was a joke. Thank you. I thought it was like a prank being pulled on me. I'm like, they're just being nice to me because I'm a pregnant girl, because I had like struggled for years and years. I had struggled in school. So the thing that you were getting to is my parents were super abusive. They were divorced since I was the toddler, but my mom remarried pretty quickly. She actually married her boss, and he didn't want kids. He was like, just, he just supported all of her addictions and stuff. So that's really how it went. He enabled her for years, and she was, I didn't realize it at the time, but both my parents were mentally ill. So growing up, I had no clue. And just to give, people an idea, my birth father is schizophrenic and has drug addiction. Especially heroin was, what he was on by the time I was a teenager, heavily. And my mother was an like at-home alcoholic. So, not understanding as a kid growing up that there was something wrong with them, and thinking that that was normal, their crazy behaviors and fighting and all that. Even though I had moved senior year, I think it didn't really hit me. I didn't really like take time to process anything. And especially because I was, basically coming of age. I was about to be 18 and an adult. I just kind of pushed it away. So, I had my daughter. I graduated early. I apparently was smart.
You're smart.
Who knew? I was like, at that time, I think it was like just a shock for me that like being put in a healthy environment and having a support system, my aunt and uncle had 4 kids at the time. So, having the little ones there, and my grandma lived there too, my dad's mom. So we had like this little supportive unit, and everyone helped me. And it was just like, just my life completely turned around from that point
Amazing.
on. So yeah, so that was like a huge shift for me. But for the next, I think about 6 years, I went to college. So first I went to community college for 2 years and brought Belle with me. So that's what I was talking about earlier. I loved bringing her. I would push her around
So
campus,
cool.
and yeah, it was amazing. So that was like the first big step that I feel like I watched other people who are pregnant, from senior year and even the beginning of college, girls get pregnant and then just drop out, or they would just panic and not know what to do and marry the guy. Just really, really like bad, quick decisions, no support system. And I was so shocked because the only thing I really had to do to get into college was apply, right? Like the running joke for me was like, how does a pregnant girl get into a college? She fucking applies for it and then she gets accepted and then she goes. But I watched this whole culture of people, especially with those TV shows on, thinking that being a teen mom means that you're trashy or you've slept around or you're irresponsible, you're stupid, the list goes on. And it was really eye-opening for me to have that experience and to just be walking around doing my business, bringing my kid around, and people are shocked and they're asking me, like I said, those ridiculous questions like, how'd you get here? Like, what, how'd you
I
make it
drove.
happen?
I fucking drove here. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, so that was really awesome, to be able to bring her those 2 years. And during that time I had like huge realizations about life and the world
Yeah.
that I was living in. And I was a single mom, so the guy that I had my daughter with, while I was pregnant, that dissolved basically in between me moving and everything. His family gave him the option. His family gave him the option of being a parent, and also told him that he'd get a new car and like stick with sports and a scholarship and stuff if he just like didn't go through with
Well, that's
supporting
a
me.
sign of somebody
And
who's ready to become a parent. So that's
yeah.
good.
Well, and so, the thing about trauma too, the thing that was funny, and this was I'm like, spoiler alert, several years later, I finally looked into my own trauma and issues, and I realized that, he and I had grown up in a very similar situation, had abusive parents that were divorced and had different addictions and like, personality disorders. And it was really a relief being a single mom. And that's one of the things I wanted to say too. And I love that you have this show and that you're doing this and you're getting,
Thank you.
people's different perspectives, because it was fucking awesome. Like, I want to tell all the single moms, like, hey, like, embrace this shit. Love it. Love your kid as much as you want. And, do the things that you want to do in your life. So that was the biggest revelation in that, span of time. And by the end of those 2 years, I had joined several clubs on campus. I had brought her, like I said, to classes and stuff. There was a daycare on campus. That's another thing that helped me out. And I was completely on my own financially. And all I did was walk into financial aid and say, I need some fucking help. Please help me. And I got so many scholarships at the mere fact that I applied for them. A lot of people don't even apply. Being able to so those 2 years I went to school completely free, between
Oh,
grants and scholarships. So that was amazing. Daycare was free too. I did research on the computer. I found out that there was like a child subsidy grant, which, by the way, if you're a single mom, look it up in your state. Like, I just Googled the fuck out of everything. And that might sound really silly, but I
no.
kept this like pink binder that I just dragged everywhere, and I still have it. I can't bring myself to like get rid of it, because
Okay.
it was like my like holy grail. Every time I'd Google something and it would help me out, I would stick it in there.
You know, though, when
So
your daughter's older, and I know she's about to become 13, and I think we all know what teenage girls can sometimes be like. And I'm sure she's a lovely little girl. She seems very lovely. Like when she's like 20, or if she's being like a real shithead when she's like 16, be like, here, look at all this stuff I did. Like,
mhm.
you shouldn't get rid of it. It's such a point of pride, like what you did for yourself and for your kid. Like, that's your history, you know?
And I think that people don't realize their own capability. It's like I hate the saying of like, you have to go through struggle in order to achieve things. I don't think we have to. I just think that some people don't have that support system. Some people don't have, you know, anything optimistic to kind of lean into when they're going through, you know, a heavy thing. But you know, I just had made those decisions and ran with them. And, you know, another thing about being a single parent was like, I didn't have to run my choices by anyone. I didn't have to, you know, oh, well, let's see how we can compromise this so I can go to school nights and you go to, you know, like, no, it was just like me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that you know was really major for both of us, and it was also really cool to watch my daughter, you know, developing that way. Where, like I said, she would come to feminist rallies with me and like events on campus. And yeah, my little Bella, like I
I
joined
love it.
student government, and they actually made her a T-shirt, and she was on the brochure. Like she was a college student just
So
like me. Like
great.
it was just like. So that was great. And then by the end of that, I ended up applying for Stony Brook University, and this was like the next huge major shift where I was just like, this is happening. Like, I know what I want. It's totally not the major I thought I wanted, but I'm like, I'm totally clear now. And I decided to apply for women's studies and basically to focus on social justice and further understanding how I can get involved on campus, because that I fell in love with that in community college. So yeah, I applied for there, and it was like a 6-month wait time to find out, you know, this was like probably February or March or something of that year. And I'd have to wait until August to find out if I was in. And that was going to be a major move because I was going to move from my aunt's house to on campus housing.
Oh,
They had apartments. So I found out they had family apartments and applied for that. So this was like, you know, if anyone who knows me, like, not only is it hard for me to like keep a surprise, like I'm the worst. Like if it's your birthday, like you can't be near me until it is, because I'll just tell you like. But yeah, it was so hard to wait that I decided a month later to go to Stony Brook campus, because it was like right down the road from my other school, and just start showing up and meeting people. And I went to financial aid and like brought them bagels. I went to the department head of the, you know, the place that I was applying for my major, and I just kept like going in, introducing myself, bringing my kid, like same thing I was doing at my other school. And yeah, the guy that was the head of the major that I applied for, he was like, you know, you gotta wait until you get your acceptance letter. And I'm like, I can't wait. So when can I come sit with you? You know, when can I meet with you? And he's like, no, you really, you know, you have like 4 more months, so you can, you know, come back then. And basically I showed up like 4 or 5 times, and then finally he just sat with me. And once he did sit with me, I was like, okay, well, I already know I'm going to get in. Like it's just going to happen. So, you know, let's just talk about what I'm going to take. Let's talk about what internships. And he's like, okay, internships are in 11, you know, your like third
you're like
quarter or
junior.
rotation. Yeah,
Okay,
like
rotation. Okay.
yeah. So he was like, you know, we're not going to talk about that yet. Like we'll talk about if you get accepted, but we're not going to. I'm like, no, we're going to talk about that. So I like opened my binder and I'm like, well, this is what I've looked up. This is what I want to take. Like this is, you know, and he's just like, oh my God, like you're not going to go away, are you? So yeah, I ended up taking every single thing that I said I was going to take. And I've just always been like that. I think I didn't really recognize it when I was younger, but I've always had a drive. Like if I see something and I want it, it's happening. So
It's
yeah,
incredible. And you know, like growing up in the environment you grew up in, it's something that's just like inherently you, right? Like that's not a learned behavior. Like that's who you naturally are. I'm like smiling here for me. I'm like trying not to like smile too big because I like your story. It's just so great though, Jean. Like everything you've done for yourself and for your kid, like it's amazing. Like, and
thank you so
I
much.
don't, I'm sure like people have told you that before, but like, I'm pretty much a literal stranger to you that has like fangirled from afar to be like, this chick is fucking incredible. Like, you just showing up and being like, no, we're going to talk about internships now. Like, your sense of urgency is unmatched. Like, it's
Thank you so
really,
much.
really cool. It's really
Thank
cool.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that was a good point that you said too, and I kind of would want, you know, anybody watching to really think about that, about their own character. Like you are not who your parents say you are. You are not who raised you. Like that was something really big that I started to face. I would like to say my senior year of that 4-year college, I really started to slow down emotionally and start to like face a lot of my trauma. So let's see, that's 6 years of college. Um, that was like 8 years after leaving my house, just to give people an idea. Like, I'm now 13 years in, so that was like 8 years in when I finally was like, okay, I need to take care of myself emotionally. I've kept myself busy for years. I've kept myself like, I loved learning. I loved all my classes, and I was not just like a perfect straight A student. Like, I had to work my butt off, and
Sure.
one professor, I took his classes 4 times, like 4 different, not the same class, but 4 different classes, just to finally get an A from him, because he was a real hard ass. Like, I was just committed. That's what
Yeah.
I'd like to say. But I think that it's like, when you grow up in an environment where you're constantly by yourself, or you're constantly choosing to kind of, hide away and be from, whether it's violence or just abuse, or maybe just you don't like being around, the people that you're with.
Yeah.
I think there's a power to that, to be able to think for yourself and figure out who you are. And I know that it feels really scary and, vulnerable when you're going through it. And I think it's, I am proof too that it's kind of psychologically normal to disassociate. So, for people that are listening, it's, your body automatically wants to protect you. Your brain wants to protect itself. So in order to do that, your brain will block out certain memories just to see that you thrive and that you're healthy, and that, you're not looking too hard inward. So I think the hardest part is when you finally start to realize that your own personal life, like your dating life, your emotional life, your self-care, when you finally are like, okay, I got to get a handle on that, like, especially like towards your late 20s, I feel like you take this turn where you're like, okay, I got to slow down and I got to start thinking about myself. Like, what kind of person am I? I think that's when I really started to question, like, okay, what did I pick up from that environment? What did either hinder me or hurt me, or, so yeah, so it was pretty much, like I said, after 6 years of school and, really trying my hardest to get my life together, I wanted to apply for my master's degree. And I was like, okay, I'm super fucking driven. I love this. I love my major. I'm going to go hard. I'm going to do this. And, I'm going to apply for social work in either through Stony Brook Hospital or through the local school, so that I could basically give back and work with girls who were like me, and try to catch, teen moms of that generation, and work them through school and getting their license and all that kind of stuff. So that was my plan. That's what I was on track for. But life is funny.
Life is funny. Yeah.
Life is super
Life
funny.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So senior year, halfway through the year, I ran out of financial aid. And they were like, okay, this is your last semester of school, but you only have enough to get you through like another 2 months. And if you're going to be graduating and then applying, for your master's, you're going to have to cover the difference of your housing for the summer in between. And then grad school is not covered by financial aid. You'll have to apply for loans. And I had done so much research on everything, but I don't know how I could have dropped the ball on the specific thing about financial aid. Yeah. So at that point, I was just like, my head was spinning. It was like Christmas time. And I'm like, holy shit, what am I going to do? And then my relationship fell apart. So I was dating someone. Oh God. I think, okay, the worst experience as a single mom is dating. And I feel like people are like going to nod their heads. Like, it sucks. It
It
sucks when you're
has
trying
to.
to,
It has
yeah, it
to.
totally has to. And like, here's the thing, you can't avoid it. You have to date really shitty ass people. And that's like the worst advice that I'm going to give right now. But like, you really do. You have to date people that like, I look back now and I'm like, how the fuck? Like I was, totally driven and on point. And the thing is too, like, disclaimer, I didn't want anyone to wreck my plans, right? Like, senior year, my plans had been wrecked so hard, and the mere decision of, keeping my daughter and raising her, like, my whole life changed. So when I was dating again, I was like, okay, like, dating means you can come visit me in my apartment. Dating means that, like, you're my boyfriend and you can come, like, see me or hang out, but then like you got to go. It's my place, it's my rules, it's my plans. This is like my school, this is my thing, this is my kid. Like, so that was another thing too, is like we dated for a few years, kind of on and off, but I did not want like a parent for my child. I did not want a husband. I did not want, you know, something permanent. In a sense. And I think that's the thing too, that I just didn't really analyze all those years, is that I had my guard up so strong without even like fully realizing it.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it was a disaster in many ways, but I think I also just really wanted to feel like a normal girl growing up. Like, just, I wanted to date. I wanted, you know, to have a best friend. I wanted to go on, you know, go out. So I think senior year was that like pivotal moment where, like, after the breakup, when school was about to like change up again, I was like, okay, what do I really want? Like, what am I actually doing here? What kind of person am I? What do I want for my kid? You know what? It's okay for me to not want to do this all by myself.
True.
So, you know, I went through a funk for for a few weeks of like, okay, gotta get my game plan going. And one of my friends was like, just try online dating. Like, online dating is cool because like you can make a profile and it's like super transparent. You know, as much as you want to say about yourself, you can. And obviously the more you say, the more you like weed out who's going to talk to you, right? So
Losers.
I'm
Yeah.
like, and she's like, you know, if you do that, like, you don't even have to go on dates. Like, you could just chat with people. Like, it'll make you feel human again. You'll feel
Yeah.
nice, you know. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll try this. So you know, I've always been like pretty transparent and blunt as fuck. So I wrote a pretty blunt profile, and I guess it was like for 2 months I was on it. And here and there I would like chit chat with people. And then I started looking at like the matches, like who's my highest matches and what does that mean? So I used OkCupid, and if anyone's ever used that, it asks you like all these questions, and then it rates your match level based on your like shared answers. So this one guy I had a 96% match with, and I'm like, that's pretty good. I should look
Not
into
bad.
that. So yeah, so I saw his profile. I start looking through it. In his pictures, he was like holding a kid in one, and I'm like, okay, that's cute. Like, he likes kids. And I forgot, in another one, he was like hanging out with friends. I'm like, okay, he's social. You know, like typical things. I'm like scanning it. I start reading his actual profile, and I'm like, holy shit, like, this is coherent. This is gonna sound so bad, but I'm like, because all these other profiles, everyone's just like, you know, NA, or like they don't write shit, or they write something really like, you know, I'm looking for something casual. But this guy, like, literally he had paragraphs of like describing his character, his things that he loves, things that he, you know, dislikes, what he wants in a partner, and it was like literally outlined like a freaking resume. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of attractive. Not gonna lie, he actually understands himself and he's writing about it. Like, I think I'll message him. And then I like scroll down, I'm reading the whole description of, you know, like what he wants in a partner. And it's like someone who's really driven, someone who knows what they want. I'm like, check, you know, me, all my,
Yeah. It's
in
me.
my hot shit. Like, okay, that's me. And then it said somebody from a good family. And I felt this like,
Uh,
ugh, you know, I felt this sudden rage, and we still like tell this story every year, him and I, like, we still laugh about it. But I got so angry that I stopped reading, and I sent him a message, and I was like angry texting. I was on campus with my friends. We were like in the middle of lunch, and I just start like, you know, I'm just like typing away, and I'm like, who does this guy think he is? Like, he sounds so great, but he thinks that a good girl can't come from a shit family, and I'm about to educate him. Yeah, and I'm like,
I'm
so
gonna marry the shit out of him. He'll see. He'll
so
see.
I write him this, like, I don't know, I think it was like 3 paragraphs. It was like really long, like a long ass rant, okay? And like, you know, I watched my grammar, guys, but I was really pissed, and I thought I was yelling at him. Like, in my mind still today, this is like 5.5 years later, like, I'm pretty sure that I yelled at him because I was super offended by that. And he answered me back, and he was like, I have never heard such like depth, or like someone so outspoken, like, holy crap. And he's like, I'm so sorry, like, I did not mean that. in a bad way, and like he was explaining a bit, but then he was also asking about me. But that first message I sent him, I went all out. I was a teen mom. I came from, a drug addicted and like mentally ill family, and my ex, like in high school, like I got abandoned by everybody, and blah, blah, blah. Like I literally just laid it out, and I'm like, I went through shit after shit after shit. And then I did this, by myself. And I am a great person. Like, fuck anyone who said, I'm pretty sure I even like cursed about it. And I was like, I know who I am. I know what I'm worth. And I can thank myself for who I am today. And he was just like, what?
Yes.
Like, he was like speechless. So he messaged me back, he apologized. Not that he needed to, but then we like went through a whole back and forth, and it was like this really deep conversation about people and their character and all that. And we ended up messaging through there for a few days. And then I think he tried to like just casually give me his number and be like, oh, text me. And
I'm not into your DMs.
Yeah. So we started texting each other, and then we were like texting night and day, like I was just, hooked on it. We were constantly talking, and then his birthday was coming up, and what was it? Oh yeah, I baked him a cupcake. And I said happy birthday at midnight. That's like a little tradition that I love to do. So I did that for him, and then all of a sudden, like, the phone was ringing, and I'm just like staring at it, and he's calling me, and then I start panicking because I'm like, oh my God, like we've only texted, we haven't heard each other's voice yet. Like, this is, oh my God. And I remember I'm like pacing, sweating, I'm like going into a panic. So I answer. We ended up talking for 13 hours. I'm not even kidding.
Oh my
That
gosh.
night, yes, I did not go to class the next day. We talked the whole night into the next day. And then for, I think, a week or so after that, we were just like, we would text during the day, and then at night we'd call each other, and we would talk until the birds came out in the morning. Like, we would hear it in the background. We literally just did not sleep. And I don't know, we talked about literally everything there is in the universe to talk. Like, that's what it feels like. We just in depth. And he was actually just temporarily living out there because he was working with his brother in what his brother was doing. He has just one older brother, and he's from here. So we ended up moving up here. Spoiler, this is my husband. So
we should probably let people know you married the guy.
Yeah. So we just we completely fell in love. And by the time we met, like, we hung out finally. It was so casual. I decided, like, no makeup. Like, I didn't even do my hair. I was like in pajamas. It was in the evening. And I was like, you know what? Fuck this. Like, I've done so much for so many years. Like, I am not going to paint myself. Like, you're just going to see me as who I am the first night. And if we click, great. If we don't, we don't. But like, we already had such a strong connection. So we hang out and we just like watch movies and talk. And he stayed the whole night. We talked all night. And that was it. That was literally it. So we're 5.5 years in. He's my longest sleepover in the world. And yeah, I just like, that whole senior year was crazy for me because I think I really started to intentionally think about what I want. I wrote this whole list out of what I want in a partner after that breakup, and it was like 4 pages long. It was
very organized.
It was mostly what I never want again. And same thing with school. I started to realize, and even though I had applied already for that master's program, I started to realize that I was actually terrified of doing it, and I felt really rushed, and I was freaking out. And so basically within those few months of, dating and also finishing up senior year, I did get accepted, and I ended up turning it down. And that was obviously really huge because I had worked for 6 years to get, to where I was going. But I realized that I would literally just be revisiting all the things that I went through as a kid, all of the trauma, all of the hard things. I watched the system fail kids over and over and over. I was told by social services and social workers, countless times that basically I'm not going to end up doing anything, or that I shouldn't even bother, or I just basically got ignored. So having that experience as the person receiving it, I thought I could make a difference. And I think a lot of people feel like that. You get to a point where you're like, how can I help people? How can I, change people in the world? But at that point, I was just like, I'm not ready for this. This is going to be terrifying. What am I going to do? And at the time, he was working with his brother, and then his parents were like, hey, we got this opportunity to purchase a new company. They're all entrepreneurs, and they're all like, he's very close with his family, and they had just bought a print shop. So my husband knew nothing about art at all. He just knew how to run businesses. Like his whole family, you know, all his life had run different businesses. So he was like, hey, I'm going to have to move back to New York State next month. And you're going to be graduating and need to figure out what you want to do. You know, what do you want to do? Basically, I ended up taking the chance, moving with him out here, and it was fucking awesome. So, you know, this entire time has completely changed me. We did spend like 3 years after that in that business, the printing business. Then we ended up getting married. We had our 2 boys back to back, pretty much back to back.
Go
And
big or go home, Gene. You don't do anything small, man. Come on. Gotta have 2 kids, right?
Right? I know. So Bella was thrilled. That was another big thing is, you know, the huge shift next, or the next big thing that, you know, we overcame was like how to become blended family, how to have a step parent. And I hate that word. Like, you know, to me, I had a stepfather growing up. It was a person who, you know, he wasn't my biological father, but he, you know, married my mother. For us, it was like I was finally finding a partner to share my life with and to share my child with. So, you know, that had its own challenges. But Bella was in love with becoming a sister. That is like probably her favorite part of the whole story, is just like becoming a family, you know, having brothers, you know, was really special for her. And thank goodness she went to all those classes. I had taken midwife classes and nursing and stuff too. And she was in the room for the births, and she was like my little mini midwife. Yeah, so that was, you know, that was amazing. And the last 5 years, it's funny, it feels like a whole new life. Like every, you know, chunk of like 5 to 6 years felt like an entire lifetime of experiences and, you know, major shifts. So it's pretty funny when people ask me to like retell it or to look back, because I'm like, oh my God, like I've gone through so many different phases and situations. Yeah, so I ended up being able to just kind of come full circle around and be an artist and, you know, become a mom and a wife. And
So
yeah.
cool. You know, it's amazing though, like you've been in all these different phases, but it's like it feels like an incredibly natural evolution. Like because you're such a like planner and you look ahead, every step that you've talked about in your story, while you're going through it, you're like, oh, it feels so disjointed. Like I'm going here and I'm doing this. Like it's just your story though. Like it flows and it makes sense when you tell it out loud. I have a couple more questions for you, and then I'll let you go back to your meltdown mayhem household right now. So coming up in a toxic environment, is your parenting style just to do the opposite?
Yeah. So so you know, with that, like I said, I had no idea until my 20s, like once I was living on my own, that my parents like did end up becoming diagnosed with mental illness. They both have had very bad health conditions since, and, you know, their own situations. I chose to cut them off and not have a relationship with them. But I realized that there are things that I learned of value from the situation, not necessarily from them. And I think a lot of it was just that resilience. So it's actually a little tricky now to teach your kids without giving them some major, you know, life obstacles, because I learned how to be that way from having to rely on myself, right? And, you know, the biggest question for me has been like, how do I teach my kids to be independent in a gentle and loving way? Because that is not what I had. So I would say that that's my goal, is like, how can I make my kids feel secure and, you know, in charge of their own life, but also, you know, view me as their home, and no matter what they do and where they go, they want to come back to me. So I think that's a super big challenge that it's kind of like one step at a time, you know, especially going from raising a kid alone. I was a different parent with Bella for sure. And not just because of age or anything. I just feel like, you know, for everyone out there, if you have one kid, it's a whole different world when you add on, you know, more kids. My number one goal is just like, how can I how can I do this in a way where I am being hands-on and supportive, but still get the same outcome?
I love
So,
that. That's
yeah.
great. And I want to chat about your two businesses very quickly, but I had one more question about
Yeah.
your overall experience. And I think the answer is probably yes, but I'd love to know where. You've had like a pretty tough run of it, and you take it on the chin and you're incredible. Is there anything that you like have been able to find humor in, like down this path? Like, has anything just stood out to you? They're like, that was pretty fucking funny that happened.
Hmm.
If the answer is no, I totally get it. It's
No,
not
no,
a
no,
super
no. You know
funny
what?
story.
I think what's funny is, like, for example, having a kid so young and then having to tell your kid, especially now, like we were saying, like my daughter's going to be a teenager, telling her that I was a teenager and only 3 years older than she is now when I had her is like mind blowing. But
Yeah.
now looking back and telling her the stories of what we went through, and, especially we were like sisters. We were a lot more like sisters growing up than me being a parent. And it's completely okay that it was that way. It needed to be that way at the time. But I think it's like overall funny now for me, like, okay, Bella swears that she's never going to have kids. Right. But like, I raised this kid with so much love and so much attention. And, she saw like all the things that we went through together. So I'm thinking she's going to be like super loving. She's going to want a million kids. She's going to love the hell out of motherhood because she watched me,
Because of her
and
mother.
yeah, and Bella is just so funny to me because after all this, after everything we've gone through, like the thing that she has to say for herself is she's like, kids are a headache. Like, I'm never going to have kids. Like, like I'm thinking she's going to be like, you were so resilient and strong. And not that she doesn't think those things, but like, her summary is basically like, you had to do all of that. Like you had to like, and you were a mom. And now she sees, my boys are just like, they get into everything. They climb everything. They touch everything of hers. And she's like, no, I'm not doing this. Like, you might have been fooled.
Funny.
You got looped into this, but I won't be. Yeah.
Good for her, man. Good for her. Before we start to wrap up, because it would be super rude to not talk about it, you have two really cool businesses, Authentically You Branding and your mental health blog, Jaded Survivor. So talk to me a little
Yeah.
bit about both.
Okay. So yeah, about 2 years ago, we were kind of winding down in our business and talking about it because we had a newborn and a toddler and my daughter, and we were working full time. And we decided, like, okay, we're going to start working from home instead. We're going to pack up we had a local location. So we moved back home. It was a lot easier on us, I thought it would be a lot easier on us being home. And then just the pile of motherhood and work and everything else just really like got to me. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm alone with myself too much, and something's got to give. And
That's
at
a
that
t-shirt you should make, by the way. That's something you should brand. It should be Pile of Motherhood. That's a good one.
yeah, so
I'm not a
no,
branding expert, but I think you might be onto something there.
yeah, so no, it was a lot. And I finally was like, okay, I need something for myself. Like besides working had slowed down, like I said, and I had the baby, I decided to start a mom blog. And pretty quickly in the beginning of that, I was like, okay, this is not for me. I love writing. I miss researching from school and stuff, but I feel like a hot mess mom. And this is like, I love the name of your show because I felt like I can't talk about the things I want to talk about. Like everyone else who has a mom blog is like marble counters, and they're talking about like what hair iron they use. And I'm like, my kids are breaking shit. And I'm I'm barely surviving this, people. So yeah, I quickly was like, no, this isn't going to work for me. I can't niche down on being a mommy. Like, that's not what my life is about. I've gone through some hard shit and I want to talk about it. So I decided, like, I'm going to start a mental health blog. And I researched it along the way. It wasn't just one great epiphany. Like, I researched and I started looking into it. And I was like, yeah, if I'm really going to do this, I'm going to pick a date that's special to me. And at the time it was like heading into May. May was when I left my school, the high school, when I got kicked out of my parents' house, all that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this in May. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to ditch my other website for building this one. And thank goodness from the print shop, I had experience on how to start, building my site and everything. And I told my story, like my literal story of like, becoming pregnant and then having to leave everything, in order to keep the child. That, to me, that was like the most painful story. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to start with the biggest one, and then we'll just, work our way in.
I
So
remember
yeah.
reading it and being like, oh my gosh, like this is great. I mean, it was incredible. It was so beautifully
Thank you.
written and detailed. Yeah, it was, I'm
Yeah,
going
well,
to
and
tag it out so people can find, of course,
thank you
the
so much.
site, but it's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. So I decided that I wanted to start, writing and talking about all the hard things. And I didn't just want to tell my story. I wanted to leave it open for other people to tell theirs. And so people can submit their story and stuff. And after that point, fell in love with designing and writing even more, because I was doing it for myself instead of, all the clients. And it was super hard designing for literally anybody who would come in and pay back then. Like, with my husband, I didn't choose my clients. We just served whoever came in locally. So that was a huge lesson in itself. So when I got the chance to, do something for myself, I fell in love with it. And for a few months after that, I was working with just friends that I met online. Like, it kind of blew up. Once I started posting all my stories, I started meeting people who, went through the same things, and talking to, more people on Facebook that I could relate to. So I started to design for them too. I just didn't really tell anyone. And I loved it so much. And then I finally decided to like try to barter my services to design for someone in exchange get coaching. So I started doing that kind of on the down low as well. And that just like changed everything for me. All last, fall and winter just completely, again, shifted everything. And I was like, okay, what do I really want to do? Like, what, I'm like kind of tiptoeing around here. And I realized that I want my own graphic design company, and I want to do it my way and serve who I want to work with. So that took off in February. And I really very quickly came up with the name, the idea, all that stuff. I wanted to call it Authentically You, because I have always been all about being yourself, your utmost, most, raw, authentic, blunt as fuck self. So I was like, I want to do that for people. And that's what was missing when I designed for others was, working with just anybody, especially people who they haven't been on that journey enough yet to really understand themselves or what they want. So I decided to do that. And within the last, I think it's been 6 months now, I have been designing, and I am in love with all the people that I work with. I'm watching them, transform their identity. They're stepping into who they are, and they're becoming unapologetic. And like, what's better than that? So yeah, I realized after this whole past year that I basically, between the two different passions, like I help people figure out who they are and basically shed everything that's not good for them. And that's not just labeled as, branding. That's not just blogging. That's like identity transformation. So yeah, I think that, like you said, it's kind of funny. Everything led me to here. All of my experiences, even from a young child until now, have gotten me to this point. But now it just feels natural. What I'm doing just feels like, I don't have to try it. And like, what more could you want, out of a job, especially from home? So
Incredible. Jean, you're amazing, and thank you so
thank
much.
you.
I have one last wrap-up question.
Yeah.
What is something you wish you knew before becoming a mom that you know now?
Oh, everything and nothing. um, Man, you know what? I wish I realized how like time flies. I spent a lot of time stressed out over the years trying to make things perfect for Bella, and I spent a lot of time worried because of people's dumb advice, like I told you with, like don't love your kid too much.
Don't love your
And
kid.
I wish I realized that time flies so much that you have to like relish in the moment. All the friends that I had, all the experiences I've had, all, you know, all these little achievements that I had, like, I just want to like be able to go back in time and love the fuck out of those people and those things, because you don't realize that they're, you know, they're going to end at some point.
Yeah.
So same thing with your kids. Like, my kid is going to be 13, and I just, you know, once in a while you get that feeling again. You just wish they were like 2 and could just, you know, get scooped up in your arms again. So yeah, I think it's the concept of time.
That's awesome. And again, you're incredible. And if you don't hear it enough, you're incredible and everything you've done to
Thank you
get
so
to
much.
this point. Of course, I mean, it's great. And I'm so excited for people to hear your story in a different way. You're so well written. And, you know, again, I'm going to, of course, tag out your blog, and we'll tag out authentically you, so everybody can find you, who doesn't want an identity coach basically to help them shed the bullshit that they've been attached to. So again, thank you. And thank all of you out there. Please follow us on all kinds of social media. I will certainly post it after this episode. And thank you for watching Shit Moms Won't Say.